Hello everybody. It is Sucha here, also known as Primal Yogi on Instagram, primal.yogi. And today I'm excited to dive into the topic of spiritual fasting with you, which really is like a big part of my life's work. It's what all of the different nuggets and signs and signals from life have been calling me into. You know, fasting is such a big practice and, method that people are using for weight loss and ketosis, autophagy, neuroplasticity, all of these amazing benefits that we hear that fasting is a tool for. But what I really found healing with as far as fasting goes is the spirituality, how I was able to really get clear and more closer on my spiritual path through the practice of fasting or taking a conscious meditative approach to fasting. I have a really good friend of mine, Perla. She's an amazing chef and she comes on some of our retreats. And she said that one of the closest ways to get to source is through fasting. And I thought that was so beautiful and profound because it truly is. I mean, you're stripping away all of the externals. You're not getting all that dopamine and excitement from all the things that are taking away from your attention and energy. And you're just brought to your bare essence through fasting. And that's primarily food fasting because I think food is such a big driver for us, but that can also mean technology, that can mean sex, different things that are just taking away our energy and calling for our quick response and quick attention, and being able to fast from that, allowing us to take full control of the driver's seat in our life and not being a slave to anything. There's another quote I heard and it was like, anything that you can't fast from, you're a slave to. And of course we need food to just survive. We need air to just survive. We need sex to even procreate, or some people could say survive, or we could use technology to survive and, go about our jobs in this day to day. But getting to call the shots of when you decide to do the thing or take action on the thing rather than being a slave to it and letting that desire or urge just control your entire life. So fasting has been so profound for me, and today I want to dive into the different aspects of the spiritual approach to fasting and how it can be super, super profound for your path to God, to source, to finding the universe, finding the love within yourself, and actually healing your mental health as well. So for me, that was so many different layers that I'm going to get into today. So first, I want to just dive into this on a biological level. It was during my 300-hour yoga teacher training. I was in Rishikesh in India, and there was a library of books, and I decided to just grab a book and browse through it. And of course, because of the universe just leading me to my path, I stumbled across a page that's on fasting, and I was like, whoa, hold up, this is like an ancient practice. And I'd already been fasting for a while, but I really didn't put together the spiritual approach to it or the energetic approach to it. I was kind of more just surface level. This is good for you. This is for your brain. I was really inspired by all the brain benefits because I used to work at a neuroscience clinic where I was introduced to how amazing fasting could be for increasing neuroplasticity of your brain, making it more plastic. And also just familiar with like the weight loss and how it could help with actually muscle building. But I was still really not aware of the conscious, physiological and spiritual benefits. And in this book that I opened up, it said that just a single grain of rice secretes the same amount of digestive enzymes that your body's preparing for as it would a whole entire meal. And because we have food as an abundance and there's so many exciting snacks and healthy snacks and different things, I definitely am guilty of being a snacker. And some people just classify themselves as snackers and they do well with it. And that's totally fine if you have a really healthy relationship with food. But I didn't. I actually had a little bit more disordered eating and I had a lot of binge eating tendencies. So snacking could easily turn into a full binge for me where I just feel uncontrolled and all of a sudden I feel like a slave to food. So that's why I bring it up. So in this book, it's talking about how literally just a little grain of rice, like not even a full-on snack, but just a little morsel of rice is instigating the response to go into a full preparation for eating an entire meal. So that itself is taking so much energy within your body. So I think we're all clear as far as the fact that just simply taking a break from food conserves so much energy within you. If you've ever fasted before, even just like an intermittent fast where you're skipping maybe breakfast during the day, or you're just consciously, only eating when you're hungry, you might notice that just the amount of energy it takes where you're thinking about food, where you're cooking food, and kind of the mini food coma you have after eating food takes up so much energy and time. And in this day and age, we still try to work through it, but truly if you tap in, usually after I eat, I kind of just want a little siesta. I want to chill a little bit instead of going right back into the grind. And even leading up to my meal, I'm thinking about my meal, I'm visualizing it when I'm cooking it, then I'm smelling it. And there's a whole process that's actually really beautiful, but sometimes we actually rush through that because of our schedules. And that all takes so much energy. So one thing you'll notice with fasting is that just fasting itself is retaining so much sacred energy that you could be using towards your spiritual growth. And of course, you can do so many other things. You can be productive, you can work, you can bang out a lot of creative work that comes about, because all of a sudden, you have all of this incredible energy to put towards that. So that's one reason why a lot of people might resonate with just a simple intermittent fast, like a 16-8 or 18-6 daily schedule, because they're already conserving so much energy rather than waking up, eating breakfast right away, then feeling kind of slow, and then lunch, and then dinner, and then starting it all over again. Instead, you're almost increasing 6+ hours of abundant energy you have without needing to focus on food, digest the food, process the food. And this is another reason why people report that they get so much mental clarity. And I truly believe if we're on path, if we want to do more of the inner work, if we want to tap into our intuition and actually get, again, closer to source, closer to God, which is all within ourselves, then being able to silence out all the noise and silence as much as what we can that's going on inside, right? So when our bodies are not focused on digesting and processing a bunch of food or even a smoothie or even coffee, then we're able to silence everything in and then just tap in a little bit more inwardly. Okay, so now we're bringing this to yoga philosophy, and yogic philosophy has been such a foundation in my life. You can think of it as kind of like a handbook of guidelines, and we can practice this not through just physical postures, but actually through just a mental practice or hiring our consciousness. And so in yoga, there's two really big foundations. There's abhyasa, which is continual practice, or you can think of it as discipline. And there's also vairagya, which is our detachment or, practice of letting go. And if you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient Hindu scripture, you can think of it as the equivalent to the Bible in Hinduism. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, his disciple, and Lord Krishna is an expression of God, if you will. He's telling, Arjuna, when Arjuna is asking him, his student's asking the teacher, how do we get past the relentless mind that we have? How do we get past our constant distractions and urges? And Lord Krishna says, our mind will always be distracted. We'll always have these different things that come up for us. And that's when we bring in abhyasa, which is our continual practice, and vairagya, which is our detachment. So you can think of fasting as the epitome of abhyasa and vairagya, right? You can think of it, it's not even addressed that much in yoga teachings, but to me, what I've interpreted is that fasting is kind of the epitome, holy grail of practicing your discipline or your continual practice or your ritual, and then also a practice of letting go and detaching. Because you're doing this, both of these things, every time you're fasting. Because just to fast, it takes discipline. You need to practice that control over yourself. And then you also need to continuously let go of the different distractions and urges you're coming your way. You're taking the seat of the observer and you're becoming that loving awareness, and you're like, wow, these are all the things that are coming in and I don't need them and I'm good. Food is always abundant. It's going to be there. But right now, I'm focusing on my healing. I'm focusing on my growth. I'm focusing on creating this discipline, this muscle, right? To become stronger, to become more resilient. And then of course, all of the amazing benefits of fasting, whatever your goals are, even if that's weight loss, even if that's spiritual growth, you're creating this ritual and this discipline to get you closer to your goal. So we're gonna nerd out a little bit about the brain because this is really important. This is really important, especially my journey of healing my disordered eating with like binge eating. So we have to understand that we have our hypothalamus, which is our animal brain. It's kind of like in the center of our brain. And this animal brain is there for good reason. It's trying to do and make the decisions and giving us the signals for us to survive. So this means food. Anytime food's there, our animal brain's like, well, you need to start getting your food and eat as much of it as you can because you don't know when food's coming next. And then there's our human brain, which is also our prefrontal cortex, and that is actually a lot higher consciousness. It's higher vibrating, it's higher frequency. This is what a lot of animals don't have. This is what makes us human. We have our prefrontal cortex that, develops up until the age of 25, 26. And this part of our brain can actually say, actually, I have these fitness goals. I have this goal of spiritual growth. You are not actually hungry, you're just addicted to this food or this drug. So being able to take a step back and actually say, whoa, this is my animal brain working right now, or this is my human brain working right now. Let me take a step back and assess what I need to be in driver's mode right now. And usually this is a practice, and we come back to the discipline. This continual practice of fasting or whatever ritual we're doing is really training our brains and our consciousness to allow our prefrontal cortex to prevail and not allowing our animal brain to win every time. You see, the problem with our animal brain is that even though it's there to help us survive and live life, it's not adjusted yet to this society where we have food in abundance. We have food at our fingertips. We can get anything delivered to our door in most places. So, our animal brain doesn't know that. It still thinks we live like our ancestors, where we have to hunt and maybe fast for several days before we finally get our food. So of course, if food's there, it wants us to eat as much as we can, and fasting is like the last thing our animal brain wants. Why would we voluntarily fast, A little bit more on the animal brain. So we have these things called dopamine responses where we get really excited or really satisfied all of a sudden from things that give us that immediate satisfaction. And a big one of those is food, right? Because of course, when we have food, we're like, oh, I feel good. I feel nourished. I feel like I have fuel. I'm not feeling like I'm gonna starve. Another one is sex, because whatever our relationship to sex is, it's a innate primal instinct to live, because biologically we're here to procreate and create more of our offspring. So anytime that is involved, that's why they say sex sells in marketing. That's something that creates immediate satisfaction for us. Another one's technology. We're just in that world where we're getting immediate satisfaction from our phones, from scrolling, from attention. It's kind of a game of attention. So anytime this happens, we get that immediate satisfaction, and it's another dopamine response. Well, what happens when we do one thing multiple times and create that response and reward system? We create a really embedded habit. So to break down that habit takes time. And again, we come back to discipline. This is why the practice of fasting can be such a great metaphor for so many things we need to let go of, so that we're no longer a slave to all of these things in our life creating dopamine responses for us, and we can actually create more discipline, which actually is giving us more freedom, because when we're no longer controlled by these things, where we're no longer a slave to these things, we're actually free in the mind. So if it's 12 p.m. and lunch is coming around, you're no longer going crazy because you're hangry. You're actually able to really feel like you're in your element. You could go for 1 or 2 hours without it, because now you're able to consciously signal to yourself that you are abundant, you are safe. And safety is huge when it comes to this, right? Because we can have the goal of doing all the spiritual work, but if our brains and bodies are not signaled that we are safe, then we won't even be in the mindset and frame to be able to work on deepening our consciousness and doing the spiritual work. Because when we don't feel safe physically, then we are in fight or flight mode. We're super stressed. That's why when we're super stressed, the last thing we can think about is working on meditation or, doing a yoga class. It's the last thing we want to do because we're like, I just have so much to do. I need to do so much. And that's why stress eating is a thing too, because we're just like, we're actually like signaling to ourselves that we're safe. And so that's why it's comfort eating, but that's why it's so dangerous in this day and age. So coming back to really taking a spiritual approach to fasting, the reason why it helped me so much on my food journey is because fasting was a metaphor to signaling abundance for me. Because I used to have such a scarcity way of dealing with food. I was raised to feel like I had to finish my entire plate, and then that created a habit. And then my animal brain was taking over for so long, and I felt like I had to have all the food, and I didn't know when food would come next. And that's why fasting was just not appealing for me for so long. I was like, why would I not eat voluntarily? Eventually, when I started using fasting as a tool for my healing, my meditation would be, I feel so abundant. Food is always there for me. I have it within my reach, and I can have it anytime I want, but I'm choosing not to because I'm no longer controlled by this. And allowing those phrases and that idea of abundance to really help me lead in this practice of fasting, help me create a really strong spiritual practice with it, because abundance is not just needed with food, it's needed with so much in life. Because when we're in abundance mode, we're in creativity mode, we're in thriving, we're not surviving or just in fight or flight. We're able to tap into our space of love and bliss, and we're able to feel so whole and complete within ourselves. But again, when we're in a stressful response, this is why a lot of people have a negative experience with fasting. You're not able to be in that creativity mode because you're so stressed out, and fasting could actually add to your stress if you're not signaling safety and abundance to yourself. All right, so there's so many different types of fasting. What kind of fasting do you do to create more spiritual growth? And the answer is that that's going to be different for everybody. And I know that's not a popular answer because it's way easier if we have a yes or no, but let me explain. A simple intermittent fasting of like a 16-8 or 18-6 schedule might be a lot for someone who's used to eating literally from the time they wake up and then maybe snacking to the second they sleep. So just doing a 16-hour fast in and of itself can be a lot. And I definitely recommend, 14 hours is a really great starting point for everybody all around. At least 12 hours, right? You should not be even drinking coffee within that time. Let's say you finish eating your dinner by 7 p.m., trying to go the next day without drinking your coffee, your morning coffee, until after 7 a.m. can be really, really powerful. And then waiting a few hours until you actually eat, because that itself is allowing you to retain and store a lot of your energy. And then you're going to be able to tap into more clarity. And that time where you're fully fasted can be a really amazing time to do any deep work like breath work or meditation or different practices that you're using to deepen into your spiritual work. You're going to get benefits regardless, but let's say the second you wake up, you're going to work, then you're not able to actually take that time to tune into yourself. So even if that's 5 minutes, or for a lot of people just going on a simple walk, or if you have a dog, that's like even better, because then you're able to like really create that rhythm while you're fasted before you grab for anything. You'll notice that if you are doing intermittent fasting, if you've created a rhythm, if you've been doing this for a few weeks or a few months or even a few days, you might get really used to it quickly and you might be like, oh, this is no big deal. And that's why a lot of people that jump into intermittent fasting really enjoy it and it becomes just a sustainable part of their lifestyle. You might reach a point where you're like, oh, this is like how I should have been eating for all of these years. It's normal for me to eat 2 meals or even 1 meal a day. And so it's not that you're going to reach a plateau. It's just that you're finding that that is your normal rhythm. So now when you want to actually get into your deep spiritual work, you might be feeling called to do a longer extended fast. And I would always say, follow the call, right? Don't force it if you're not ready. But if you feel like you just don't feel ready because it's challenging, it's too hard, you feel too tempted around food, just start to journal and explore the reasons why you're feeling all of that resistance come up, and then we can work from there. Because for me, if it was like disordered eating or binge eating or fear of missing out from food or like social gatherings, there's ways to navigate around that. So if you're feeling called to a longer fast to get into that deep work, this is where, depending on what your schedule is like, you can still fast and go about your daily work depending on how much energy expenditure it is and your body gets more used to it as you do it. You can also take, anywhere from 24 hours to 72 hours to some people even do a week where you're fully retreating yourself and you're just taking it super mellow, working from home, getting into creative work, maybe even taking your work fully off and just taking it super chill and then fasting and then seeing how you do there. And then taking that really conscious time for deep meditation, practices where you're maybe out in nature, getting some vitamin D, just able to really embody and experience your full, complete essence without any of that external. And usually the first day can seem kind of interesting, especially if you're new to it. The second day, there can be a lot of resistance because you're experiencing your first night not eating, like completely on an empty stomach, and you're really feeling into your fast. And by the third day, a lot of people just experience a lot of euphoria and bliss. And that is the time where people feel very profound breakthroughs and shifts for them, usually on the third day of not having anything. But this can look different for people. Just a 24-hour fast can bring about a lot of that deep work. I always say that whether you're on a vacation or a retreat, it's usually after the second day where your body, your mind, your soul is fully integrating into your experience. And you'll find that your body is slowly shutting off all of those fight or flight stress responses, and it's becoming more at peace with the fast. So usually the third day is where really profound experiences happen. So that pretty much wraps up this video on a spiritual, conscious approach to fasting. Again, it is seriously what lights me up, and it's what I am so eager and passionate to share. I do offer coaching with this path to fasting, and whatever that looks like for you, I work with you on your goals, whether it's weight loss, muscle building, or just the deep spiritual work, gut healing, and then working into a state of ketosis, all of the things that we cover in my program called the Fit Fast. And also, I do host retreats a few times a year where we either have shorter fasts, like 24-hour fasts, or just intermittent fasts embedded into the retreat. And there's a specific retreat that we also do called the Release and Ascend retreat, where it is a 72-hour fast, completely fasting from food and technology. And this retreat is such a powerful experience. If you have any questions about anything on fasting, and then also specifically the spiritual approach to fasting, please leave a comment with your questions. It really helps for the entire community to learn. And if you enjoy this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I want to continue putting all of this information out there. It lights me up, and I hope it has helped you. Thank you so much.